Hello. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marie Davis and I am the head of our Google Customer Solutions team here at Google. And I'm also going to be your MC for today. Did everyone have a nice Thursday evening? Everyone, couple of nods. Yeah, lots of things happened yesterday evening. Irene is under a bit of pressure in Home and Away, so there's lots of tension building there. So I'm sure anyone that was watching Home and Away, it's all building up. Ireland drew 1-1 with Switzerland. Can I get a cheer? Woo! I think that's good. And our presenter, Anthony Jones, for today came down with the flu. So, so I'd like to welcome you all here today. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you in a month's time. Joking. I'd like to give a really big round of applause to Karl Lumsden, who is normally your MC, but he has stepped in at short notice to make sure that you are on track for Christmas. So if you could give him a round of applause for that, that would be brilliant. And we wish AJ the most speedy recovery that he has. So welcome to the breakfast briefing this morning. A couple of things to note. First of all, the hashtag is Grow with Google. So please, anything that you're seeing, anything that draws your attention, any conversations that you want to have, please just hashtag them Grow with Google, and we look forward to seeing what's really standing out for you. The second thing is that the presentation is going to be recorded, so you will be able to see all of this back again. And third of all, after today, you'll be getting a feedback form. And if you fill out the feedback form, the presentation will also be sent directly to you. So if you're worried about taking down notes, you don't need to worry. You'll have all that information afterwards. And with that, our speaker for today is actually the head of our agency programmes in Ireland, and no better man to talk to you about getting ready for Christmas, because he's been helping our agencies in Ireland get ready for Christmas probably since last Christmas, because that's how early things are starting now. So I'd like to introduce you to the head of agency for Ireland, Karl Lumsden.
Morning, everybody. I've had 2 claps and I haven't even started the presentation yet, so that's great. So, folks, I'm not Anthony Jones. I saw lots of you reading Anthony's bio outside. He's a good friend of mine, but I am going to kill him for letting me down. But look, as Marie said, look, a lot of what Anthony was going to talk about anyway, he works on that in that capacity with our UK advertisers. It's the same thing that I do with our Irish advertisers based here. So hopefully I'll be able to bring you through the presentation the same way that Anthony was as well. So, that's not me. So, okay, so first of all, why are we here? We're really here, guys, today to understand how can we help you guys maximize your seasonal period. It must be one of the most common parts, it's one of the most common questions we get asked is, look, it's a big time of the year for us. We know that people are looking for deals, for sales, they're looking for products and services, for presents, whatever it might be. How can we make sure that we win for our business? How can we make sure that we maximize the possible gains that are out there for us? Hopefully that's what we'll be able to talk to today as well. Okay, so 5.6 billion people or adults on the planet over the age of 15. 5.1 of them now have mobile phones, and the growth in new mobile phone purchases is flat. Okay, so really what we're looking at there is, for a long number of years now, you would have had, if you've been at Google presentations or any presentation really, it's the year of mobile. There's a lot of growth in mobile and so on and so forth. People are still getting new devices. We've kind of reached that point now where pretty much anybody who's going to get a mobile phone has one. And it's now moved from new mobile phones to actually replacements and more sophisticated technology, speed, improvements in app technology, and so on and so forth. So we're kind of at that point that we've been talking about now for a long, long time. So it's not a case now of, it's not, the access story is coming to an end. It's now, what can we do when we have that access? How can we maximize that for our business? So, can anyone tell me who this man is? Yap Stam. How many United fans have we got in the room, actually? Was anybody at the Off the Ball thing the other night with Roy Keane and Gary Neville? I watched a few clips back myself as well. Who's in the Keane camp and who's in the Ferguson camp, actually? Quick raise of hands. Keane camp. Me and 3 others. Is everyone else in Ferguson, or just don't care? Okay, grand. So look, this is going to be a bit of an abstract story, but it'll make sense hopefully as we go through the presentation. So, Yap Stam, known as a big, hard man, solid at the centre back. United sold him to 2000, the year after we won the treble in '99, because they did some analysis and saw that the number of tackles that the Stam was making per game was actually starting to decrease. So with the data and the analysis they had, they actually tried to be a little bit smart and sell him on ahead of his decline, so to speak. So while he was still at top market value, sell him on, maximize their gain, and kind of get ahead of the curve, so to speak. Now, Stam went on to play for 7 or 8 more years with Lazio, I think with Milan, Ajax as well, or Ajax in the Dutch league. So he had a lot more years left in him. And at the time, it was a strange move. Does anyone know who this man is? Paolo Maldini, exactly. Maybe one of the greatest professionals to have ever played the game. Played up until he was 41 years old. Conversely to what United did, when Milan looked at Maldini's statistics, they looked at a heck of a lot more than just raw tackles. They looked at his positional play. They looked at how many interceptions he was making. And what they found was that in his last 5 years, actually let me ask, does anyone want to guess how many, what they were calling distinctive tackles Paolo Maldini was making per game, average for his last 5 years? Just shout them out. 36 tackles per game? 22. So it was actually 1 tackle every 2 games. Half a tackle he was making. So at face value, that sounds like, geez, this guy's not doing his job here and we're paying him a lot of money and he's 41, should we be shifting him on? But actually, when they looked into the analysis of what he was doing on the pitch and for his team, it was his positional play. And actually, when he was marking players, when they looked at the analysis of the players he was marking, they were getting the ball so little because he was marking them so well. So he didn't need to do the tackling. He was actually marking his players out of the game. And he was bringing value to his teams in that way. So when we take a step back, and I know that I appreciate that's a bit of an abstract example, but when we take a step back and we look at maybe some more expansive ways of assessing data, we can maybe find out better and stronger and more insightful information for our business. And if we relate this back to what we're maybe some of you guys are looking at today, would say your Google strategy or indeed any sort of digital strategy, how many of us would just be looking at, if I put in €1 today, what am I going to get out tomorrow? What am I going to get? What sales am I getting directly out the back of that? What are the other metrics though that are going to matter for our business? What's the brand awareness uplift? What's the brand recall uplift for our business as well? If I might actually ask, can I have a volunteer? Actually, I just want to kind of demonstrate this one. And just throw your hand up, volunteer. Quick question. Gentleman in the middle. Can you describe to me exactly how you got here today, where involving any sort of movement? So if you, you got up, walked out of your bedroom, can you just describe for us how you got here today?
Yeah, I got up, made the breakfast, made my wife breakfast, got into the car, drove through a whole range of routes to avoid traffic lights.
How did you get, so you were driving out here, obviously, yeah. And then, did you park up?
Yeah, came down, found parking outside Google, contacted my app, paid for my parking.
Okay, and walked into the building, presumably. Okay, so the reason I've asked you that, so with last click attribution, we're just going to say you got here, but you walked into the building. We'll forget everything else about I drove here, I parked the car, I got up before that in the morning, I made my wife breakfast, got massive kudos points for that. But we forget about all of those important parts of the journey. If we asked you just straight up, in last click attribution world, we would just say, I walked into the building and I took a seat. So there's a bigger picture in all of these stories, and it's high time that we start looking at what are those other touch points along the journey and what do they mean for our business. Okay, so we know that there's more and more data. We know that there's an ever-evolving landscape of platforms, of suppliers, and things like that out there as well. So how do we find the right ones that are going to actually matter for the business? How do we find the right platforms, and how do we deliver a succinct message to the right people at the right time? So how do we cut through that? So we've 8 platforms across Google with 1 billion users each. What are the 8? Anyone shout up what you see there? YouTube. Maps. Chrome. Search. Gmail. I think we've got them all there. And Drive, exactly, yeah. So 75% of EMEA shoppers, so not just Irish shoppers, but I'm looking at EMEA here, will use one or more of these when they're making purchases online. 75%. 3/4 of that, and that's being bought in the EMEA region, people have at some point been in one of these products. That's a huge asset to you guys to know that and then be able to take that information and layer it back into your strategy. So that means at Google, we're uniquely placed. I mean, we are a company of data, right? We're uniquely placed. We have that data to share with you guys. And ultimately, it's about how can we find the right pieces of data from those different platforms or a combination of those platforms that are going to matter for you guys. So we know, especially going into Christmas, for example, there's a huge amount of like unboxing videos. So if you're a retailer in the room and you're selling actually hard goods and services, unboxing videos every single year keep on going up like in the hundreds of %. So if someone goes and sees a product, they're going to go and view it. They're going to see what the product looks like. They're going to see how does it actually come, what size is it, what's the quality look like, and so on and so forth. So this is the old way of how marketing used to be, right? Essentially, you had your brand. With creative and with brand strategy, essentially you'd build for the masses, right? You'd build as much kind of creative as you possibly could, push it out there, hope it would land, and ultimately hope that that would transfer into purchases or sales for the business. That's the old way, obviously in a crude kind of methodology, right? But if we break that down, it's changed, right? And this messy middle, to give it its official term, that has changed the game for all of us here in the room. So, like, what are we talking about here? Like, this is, I see a brand, and I might go read a review about that, or I check out an unboxing video on YouTube, or I check on maps to see if there's a store near me, so I can actually go and hold what I'm looking at, and see what's the quality feel like. Things have changed now. We are a much more empowered consumer. We have much more control and decision power than we ever had before. And we are very impatient, and we're very, very curious. We like to know every single detail about a product before we actually commit to it. So why us and why now? So really, it's our opportunity to help you guys understand consumer changes, right? We have all that data. But it's our responsibility to share that data back with you as marketers to empower your business to move to the next stage. Layering in behavioral sciences, so understanding what are actually going to be the trigger points for your consumers. What's going to matter to them for why they buy your product versus your competitor's product. And we'll go through some of that in a moment. And then finally, using experiments. Once we know what the consumer triggers are and the consumer behaviors are, well, let's test some of those. Let's see if that works for our brand. It's well and great saying it in theory. Not all of them are going to work for your business, but some of them will. So we have to start testing and trying these things out. Okay, so for exposure, first of all, I want to talk about exposure because at the start, I said really what we're here today is how can we maximize your kind of retail period, right? Pretty much from now through to the end of the year, maybe even until end of January. We need to be there in the first place. We have to be valuable. We have to be bringing some perceived value to the consumer, and we have to be quick. So by just being there, and you'll see this hopefully by the end of the presentation, by just being present, doing nothing else, just having your brand accessible when people are looking for you, you'll hopefully see that alone can be a differentiator from some of your competitors to get you more market share, to get you more sales, to get you more leads, whatever the case may be. So, as I mentioned, the consumer journey isn't flat anymore. It's not linear. It's not like it used to be. You had your brand, throw out your creative, and see what lands. Things have changed. We've moved to a much more complex world, as I said, where there's much more time invested by the consumers now in this whole exploration stage and ultimately evaluation moving down to purchase. I'll give an example there. In the last 2 weeks, I spent, I don't know how many hours, literally on the dart, on the train, probably at my desk when I should have been working, sorry Marie, researching car insurance brands. Now we all know that getting car insurance is a pain in the backside. It's a tough process. There's a lot of data you've got to give up before you get your quote back or you get a phone call back. I was stuck in that exploration stage for about 2 weeks. I didn't pull the trigger. I must have gone to every single brand under the sun to see who was going to give me the best deal. And each time I had to keep putting in that information. Ultimately, what moved me into the evaluation stage and actually going, yeah, is this the right one for me and moving to purchase was the AA. Because they showed me an advertisement that acknowledged that I had AA road assistance for the year for myself and my wife, which I think is, I don't know, €10 or €20 for the year. But they used the power of that data to acknowledge that I'm already a consumer, a customer of theirs, offered me an incentive to come with them, cut through all the white noise, and ultimately I bought that 2 days ago, whatever it was. So they moved me from that initial kind of exploration stage of, there's 10 brands out there, who am I going to go with? Truth of the evaluation, is this the right one for me ultimately to purchase? Because they acknowledge the data that they had and the useful information and the insight that they had on me as a potential customer. So it is a continuous cycle, and we have to move people beyond, right? We can't just, otherwise we will get stuck where we're just having people coming, reading about our brands, reading about our products, reading about our services, but not doing anything about it. We have to move people along, and we'll chat through that in a moment, how we actually do that. In this, actually, I referenced car insurance, actually. In this example as well, Marie Davis, who you just met a moment ago, when I talk about experience and positive experience and moving people to evaluation, when we were scrambling through this presentation last night and this morning to get ready for it, Marie mentioned to me that she has been with her same car insurer for 19 years, 20 years. She's going to give out to me because she said it's going to give away her age now. But for a long, long time. Because when she was a few years into the policy, had to make a claim and had a fantastic experience. They were very helpful to her, didn't put her under any pressure, and got her from A to Z with no problems at all. So that positive experience has meant that Marie has given them repeat business for 19 years. I mean, if any of us in the room here who own business or anything like that, if we have a customer who's coming back to you every single year for 19 years, your quid's in. You can't ask for any more than that. But that's the power of experience, and that's the power of understanding what's important to your consumers, layering that into your strategy and making that front and center. Okay, so what I'm going to chat to you now about is I mentioned the science behind this. What are some of those things that you guys today can think about when you go back to the desk that can differentiate your brand? So mere exposure effect, authority bias, scarcity bias, power of free, social norms, category heuristics, and the power of now. Some of these are self-explanatory, okay? You can see them yourselves. Category heuristics refers to when we embed mental shortcuts into our mind. Things that we know to be good, we'll save that in our subconscious so that when we see it again, we're much more inclined to go along with that again. I'll chat to that in a moment. Social norms is essentially, it's almost like, and I'll chat in a moment, it's almost about what everybody, what's the latest cool runners that all the kids are wearing? What's the latest app that everyone's downloaded and they're communicating through that way? It's basically social interaction that way. Scarcity bias, self-explanatory, and so are the rest. So I'll go through some of these with you now. But this is essentially the science behind how you guys can maybe change how you're putting your brand out there. So mere exposure. For me, this is the easiest one, because this does not involve any sort of mad analysis behind it or any kind of difficult kind of methodology behind it. Short and sweet, by just being there, we're giving ourselves a better chance. And I know that sounds really simple to say, but by just being present, when people are searching for our brands and searching for our services, we're improving our chances of getting a sale. Now, the trick is being present in an efficient way. We can't just throw money at every single thing, but how can we be smart with an investment to be present for the auctions that matter, for the searches that matter? And I'll chat through that as well in a moment. Heuristics, as I mentioned, that's the shortcuts or the kind of the rule of thumb. So, for example, if you're into your wine, you might go into, I don't know, let's say Super Value off license. They have on all their wine on the shelves. If you see that, you know straight away, okay, that's a pretty good wine. Like if I'm in a rush and I don't have the time to think, which country am I going to go for, which grape am I going to go for? If I see that, there's a good chance it's a pretty good wine because it's internationally recognized. This one on the right, anybody know that one? Exactly, right? Same story as well. A lot of us now do our shopping. We're going to be looking for it. We want to buy local home produce because we have trust and we have faith in that produce. We know it's quality. It's assured. So we embed that into our mind that when we see it, and maybe we don't even know it, again, it could be in our subconscious, that when you see that label, you trust it. So that cuts down that evaluation stage. Straight away we've gone from, okay, there's 10 packets of rashers here in front of me. These two are quality assured. Personally, I know that I'm going to go for the quality assured ones. Social norms I chatted about. So we adopt opinions and fellow behaviours of the majority around us. So I can remember when I was a kid, I mentioned the runners example. So when I was probably, I don't know, still 8 or 9, I remember Adidas Galaxy came out, the first runner that they brought out of that line. And if you didn't have the Adidas Galaxy on, like, go away, don't talk to me. You're not playing football with us, like, you know. So like that's an example of like the social norms that that we can find ourselves into. And I mentioned, like, you know, it's not just about hard products as well. That could be, what's the latest app that everybody's on? I mean, it seems like every few months there's a new app that kind of explodes. And that is also social norms. And so there's other examples as well. Authority bias, so following credible experts. So, you know, if you're thinking you're in a shop and you see, I don't know, a wok endorsed by Gordon Ramsay or something like that, again, it's using credible sources to reinforce the power and the strength behind a brand. Then we have the power of now, which is, of course, you know, it's fairly self-explanatory that if you come with our brand now, we can give you an incentive. So you sign up today, 20% off, whatever it might be. Buy now, get one free. That's all power of now. It's trying to incite the action today, right now, when someone has actually searched for your brand. Scarcity bias is it can be a tricky one because it's tough, right? Because you're playing a bit of a juggling game there with you know, inventory management, and we've got so much products left or so much of a service left to sell. But again, create an urgency around someone to actually take those steps to make an action, to make a purchase, sign up or whatever it might be. And then lastly, the power of free. So probably the most touchy one. A lot of people hate giving away stuff for free, but it can be a very powerful one. So again, you might give away product X for free, but the sell on after that for different kind of complementary services may pay dividends in the long run. So again, just examples of some of those kind of signals that we can use. So looking ahead to, not too far ahead, I mean, what day are we today? It was the 5th or 6th? 5th? 6th, thank you. I should know that. Looking ahead to not really too far ahead, because if you think of it, like, I mean, 2nd of October is just over there, so only a few weeks away. This is based off last year. This is the lead up to Black Friday for searches in Ireland. So you can see the various different colours. So people searching for specific brands, people searching to, you know, looking for deals, looking for specific items, asking questions. You're like, you know, what's the best Black Friday deal? And things like that. And you can see yourself, it's a whole big higgledy-piggledy mess. This is obviously where people are going bananas for their sales. But in reality, the sales behaviour really starts at the start of November. And in fact, probably before that as well. What we've seen with Black Friday sales is that as it became popular over the last number of years, it was very pronounced for a couple of years, but now actually marketers are spreading that investment over a longer period of time because, again, we can use the data we have to be more targeted with where we're going to be placing that ad. And I mentioned around efficiencies. It's one thing to be present, but we can't be present every single time. We don't have exhaustive budgets. But if we can be smart, choose the right battles, pre and post, as well as during, we give ourselves a much better chance. Okay, so then we move through to, so how can our findings help you get chosen? So how, like, amidst all that white noise and everybody's got deals, everybody's got sales, how can we cut through all that for you guys, right? How can you do that yourselves, I should say, actually? How can you go back and make yourself distinctive from some of your competitors? And as I said, really what we're trying to do there is move from that exploration stage to the evaluation and ultimately purchase stage. How can we get your customers and your consumers further down the funnel? So then we look at what we have here is a purchase simulation. Okay, so basically we ran some models, and there was a test done actually by, I think it's David Ogilvy. So basically what we do, if you look here, we've got two brands, right? Pretty much both of them the exact same. There's 150 different permutations of kind of tests that we ran here, but I'm not going to obviously go through all that today. But just the point I wanted to make here before we go into this, that they're the exact same brand. So brand A is the same as brand B. Stated brand preference is when people told us that the brand that they most associate with, their favorite brand, what we're looking at is the extent to which our survey group said that their own brand preference and category led to their purchase. So when someone told us that their favorite brand appeared in a search, they ultimately went on and purchased that. Okay, so which biases are going to influence? And I mentioned, I've gone through some of those before, so the power of free, power of now. So the social norm is a huge influencing factor. So if your product is on an upward trajectory, that's something for us to capitalize on. So almost a quarter of people are influenced by people around them, what they're wearing, where they've bought before, insurers that they've bought with before. They'll take positive recommendations off it. I mean, I'm sure we're all familiar with that expression. Was it like, if you have a good experience, you'll tell 2 people. If you have a bad, you'll tell 8, or something like that. We take information off each other, and we absorb that, and again, subconsciously, we build that into our own purchasing behaviour. The power of now, hugely important around this time of year, especially when we get into, like, say, realistically, like late November, early December. Power of now is I want this now. I'm late on Christmas shopping. I need to get that delivered today because I'm going to be out of the office tomorrow. So the power of now, especially at this time of year, maybe more than any other time of the year, is critical to your strategy. So if you can facilitate delivery the next day or the same day, we need to be shouting about that. If you can take a lead phone call today, or if you can call them back today, even better. We have to let them know that. That's information that we have to give back to the consumers. Okay, so in the clothing category, I'm just taking that as an example. State of preference, your favorite brand, wins 100% of the time when it's the only option, right? So nothing groundbreaking there, fairly self-explanatory. But when we introduce that second brand, which I mentioned to you is the exact same. So same brand, free returns, extra comfortable, free returns, extra comfortable, limited stock, 7-day delivery, 7-day delivery. By just introducing a second brand, the exact same, 35% of people will buy the other brand. Even though they've told us that their favorite brand, that's the one that they want, by just having an alternative, a third of people will go, yeah, I'll try that actually. By just being there, there's nothing different. It's the exact same product, the exact same business, same selling points, same delivery times, limited stock available, the same messages. But a third of the people will say, yeah, I'll give that a shot, by just being there. So then we added in some of the other examples, or some of the other science points that I mentioned a moment ago as well. So reviews, low reviews versus positive reviews, 7-day delivery versus next day delivery. And the difference in that kind of, next tiering of kind of charging up your business, if you like, or enhancing your business, now 60% are buying from the exact same brand, but just with slightly different offerings added in there. If you have good reviews, get them in there. If we can do next day delivery, get them in there. Because your customers are telling us now that they're flexible. They're not necessarily brand loyal. They just need to know how and when they can get that product and what the perceived benefits of that product to them as a consumer are. If we go further, if we add in free returns, if we add in the quality metric, if you want to call it, if it's clothing, it's going to be material. If it's something else, it's going to be a different call out. And if it's validated, I mentioned like the Gordon Ramsay example for a wok. In this case, if it's GQ award nominated or whatever it might be, you layer that in, and then the scarcity metric as well. Throw that in there as well. Throw all these things in that some of these are going to work for your business, some of them won't. And if we supercharge that for your business, now 3/4 of people, more than 3/4 of people, are going to buy from this brand B, which is the exact same, but they've just validated and added in extra pieces of information for the consumer to be aware of. So I think that's remarkable that 3/4 of people will move away from a brand that they told us was their favorite brand, is their only brand that they want to buy. They are willing to make that move by just having extra information that I'm sure a lot of you in the room will have some of these relevant for your business as well. So is anyone familiar with Leaf? You probably would have seen this a few times. It's popular in the UK and Ireland. A clothing brand, maybe seen it on some kids. Quick show of hands. Anybody familiar with Leaf? Yeah, a few hands up there towards the back. So it actually doesn't exist. So you've been caught out. Leaf is one of those fake brands that we made up for the case of this study. So in the clothes category, the brands are relatively interchangeable. As I said, people are pretty flexible. They're not necessarily brand loyal. So over half consumers are willing to switch for something made up. In fact, it was close to 3/4 when we looked at there. So blue is the first choice brand share. Second was that imaginary brand share. But when we actually introduce a fake brand, a brand that doesn't even exist, and put in some of those points of information, more than half of them are willing to buy from a brand that doesn't exist. So that really demonstrates to me that people, they're not necessarily looking for, I'm rigid on this brand, I'm rigid on this product. They just want to know how they can get it. What's the price going to be? Can I give it back? Can I return it the next day if I don't like it? What is it? What's the quality? Is it good material? So people are flexible. People are willing to actually look at alternatives. Consumers are willing to look at alternatives more so than they ever have before. So not just with clothing, like it's the same across other sectors there as well. I just picked clothing as an example, but like same in smartphones. So like a very heavily dominated industry by a number of very strong brands. Introduce a fake brand in there all of a sudden, and again layer in those points of information, and people are still willing to buy from that. So you would think that most people would probably be locked into an Android or an iPhone, but introduce a fake brand for a phone in there, put in some of those points of information again, and people are willing to buy for a phone. And a phone is not a small purchase. We're talking hundreds of euro here. So that just goes to tell how important these points and this kind of science behind consumer behaviour really is. If we look at toys, children's toys, obviously coming up to peak period for that, around the toy show, and I mean, like that's going to go bananas. Again, introducing fake toys in there, people are willing to have a look at buying fake toys because we can demonstrate the perceived value to them by understanding what's important to them. So look, what does all this mean? I know I've kind of played around, but what does it all mean really for us as brand marketers? How can we make this actually actionable for our business? So the first thing we have to do is we have to show up, right? I mentioned that, right? We have to be present. But ultimately, showing up, it's easy for me to say that, but it's about how can we show up in an efficient manner. You will have seen a huge investment from Google in the last year or two. Hopefully some of you will have seen this, around us enabling you to show up in an efficient manner. I'm talking about some of the bidding solutions that we've put out there, and indeed some of the creative solutions that we've put out there to try and help you guys take all the data points that I just mentioned there, but take away the manual labor of actually sitting there and having to watch this and babysit a campaign. So that's a big investment that we've made as a business. And indeed, our CEO, Sundar Pichai, said, we're an AI-first company now. Everything we do, and I mean everything we do, internal projects and everything, is all derived from AI goals. How can we be smarter? How can we take in better signals? How can we learn quicker? How can we take away the kind of menial tasks and spend more time on strategy? It's the exact same for you guys. How can we take away that time from you that to date has probably been spent on, as I said, menial tasks around sitting there, calculating bids out, writing countless different ads. How can we take that away and give you guys more time for competitor analysis to maybe develop out an international strategy and look to export? How can we give you back that sort of time? So we need to show. And actually, to that point, just as I kind of remind myself there on internationalization, I was reading an article there. It was actually from late last year in the Irish Times. I was reading it yesterday. That Irish people are now the biggest buyers per capita of international goods in the world. So there's two ways of looking at that. That's brilliant. We're very tech advanced. We love buying online. We love buying overseas. But it's also an opportunity for us to encourage locally more sales. But also a question for each of you then to ask yourselves: Are we internationalizing? Have we opened ourselves to people overseas? So instead of buying all of our goods back, are we actually opening up our Irish business overseas? Are we allowing ourselves to find an audience overseas as well? So that's just a quick side point there around something to think about as well, particularly going into this busy period. So one, show up. You can attract more potential customers through that messy middle. So again, I mentioned this is just a kind of demonstration again of when people are searching for that brand, when we've layered in that information, the share of preference for first choice brand versus other, essentially. The second is drive action. And what I'm talking about there is, again, I've mentioned a few times, moving people from that exploration stage to evaluation, to really thinking, is this right for me? Can this help my business? ultimately, or can this help me as a consumer? And ultimately, can I push them down to the purchasing stage? So how can I be present in that messy middle part that's become more prevalent in the last number of years? And then lastly, how can I accelerate? And I just touched on that there briefly. Accelerate through automation. How am I doing what's right for my business in terms of the investment into automated solutions? Or are we spending too much time on kind of things of the past, days of the past for marketing strategy? More exposure is all it takes. So the more that we allow ourselves to layer in automated solutions gives us more time around strategy to find out where we can expose our brand to. And one example I just mentioned there is around internationalization. Another might be around a strategic partnership with another brand or something like that. But giving ourselves the time and the opportunity to think about these things is what we're trying to do and what we need to be doing. And I mentioned again, just to recap around how flexible consumers are. The fake brands piece, like it is a bit of fun, but it's still, there's a huge lesson to be taken from that there, that when we have those right data points in there, when we layer in that information that consumers need and want, and we can service them quickly, we can service them now, it almost doesn't matter what brand we have. They're flexible and they're willing to move with those offerings. So it's never too early to start. Again, I wanted to highlight this, that the search queries are already going to be going up. Intent is already happening. People are already looking for those deals. I remember actually this time last year, true story, I had moved into a new house. I was looking to buy a new television. I was keeping an eye on the best sales from the end of August for the best television in anticipation for the Black Friday deals. So I knew who was going to be having what deals at what time. So essentially that was me putting myself out there that I'm interested in this. What can you give back to me? So to summarize, show up, drive action, and accelerate through automation. And please don't measure Paolo Maldini simply on his tackles. Thank you very much. Now, I did sub in for AJ, but I'll do my best to take any questions. Does anyone have any questions about what we've gone through, or maybe their upcoming strategy or thinking around seasonal shopping? Any questions, throw your hand up and I'll do my best to fire this at you. Or we can all get out early. All good? Brilliant. Oh, question over here, I beg your pardon. Sorry, you nearly got out. I'll ask somebody to try. Oh, I'll pass it back to you because just for everybody here as well. If I'll just ask you to throw that back. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, it's intense. Just in your presentation, you were talking about how clever our consumers have become, and we can see that ourselves in the different ways that they watch everything.
Yeah.
But you're actually kind of, in a roundabout way, kind of saying that there's a lack of loyalty. So is there anything that you would be suggesting, like in terms of building that loyalty that you can across Christmas? Because you're saying that looking at everything, they're not just looking at you. And even your example on a fake brand, that they'd quickly turn to something with no background at all,
yeah,
over someone that they're very aware of.
Yeah. So I actually think it's a great question, right? So in a more fickle world, consumers have more power, right? And they are moving. There is more flexibility between brands. If I think of the example I gave about Marie at the car insurance, for me it all comes down to, if you get someone in, it's the experience you give to them back after that. So once Marie signed up with that car insurer, whatever, 19 years ago or 20 years ago, sorry, I said it again. Once she signed up to them, but when she needed them, they gave her a good experience, to the point where she wasn't even looking for competitors or wasn't even opening herself up to other brands thereafter. So I think having that investment, and I suppose the smarts to acknowledge that we've probably spent a lot of money to get Marie in, to get a customer in. When you have them interested in your brand or have purchased from your brand, it's about the experience that you give to them thereafter. So ask yourself, like, what is your follow-up customer experience? What is what offers and deals do you give to a return user to incentivize them? Those are the things that I'd be asking yourselves to try and, as a business, to try and retain customers that you've spent a lot of money. So it's almost like a 3-point piece, right? You've got the kind of the open season where we had the fake brands, where you've got everybody looking for anything. You get them into the business, which is point 2. But point 3 is just as important, is what are we going to do after sales customer care to make sure that we keep them with our business? And that's where you can layer in, again, deals, incentives, or any of the other kind of science points, again, back into your strategy to make sure that they stay with you.
And do you think that reward points and reward schemes work just as well as any other deals or incentives?
It depends. I've seen it, genuinely, I've seen it work very well for some brands, and for others, I've seen it's totally pointless. So it depends on what you're going to put behind it. If it's a genuine rewards thing, and again, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. If you think that your rewards point scheme as a consumer, as me, is going to actually matter to me, brilliant. Then let's put the resource and the investment behind it as a business. If we're doing it to just say we have a reward system, then we're not really actually fulfilling a need of the consumer, and we're probably actually just wasting time and investment. So absolutely, it can work, but it'll only be as good as the investment that you put into it. Exactly, yeah.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Just on the, you were making points about those putting in place kind of things that are going to incentivize people. We're all aware of brands, like if I go shopping for a flight or a holiday, and it pops up on my screen 5 minutes to buy at this price or last remaining flights, and it becomes across as kind of disingenuous. Like, what's the risk of people becoming immune to those kind of incentives? Yeah,
look, there can be an element of that for sure, and I think I understand what you're saying, that, like, you know, if we're just throwing stuff out there the whole time, are people going to actually, does that have a perceived effect on the quality of our product or service? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, and also, like, if I go on today and it says, you know, last remaining flights, but if I go on tomorrow and then it says the exact same thing, I know, well, that's literally only applied to try and get me to buy.
Yeah, well, what I'd say then is that you shouldn't be serving that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm consumer X and I'm seeing last minute today and tomorrow and the next day, I would say we're actually probably making a mistake in the messaging that we're putting out to the consumer. Okay. So if we put out last minute today, maybe tomorrow we should serve a message around £20 off. Or the next day we might put an offer in that says, you know, free baggage check-in or something like that. So I understand what you mean around, like, if we just put out repetitive messages, is it going to kind of dilute the quality of our brand? But in each brand's case, it's around putting out the right message. So I mentioned about being present at the right time. As much as that's important, we have to have the right message at the right time as part of that solution as well. So not just throwing out, yeah, we can do free delivery and we can do this and we can do that just for the sake of it, but actually, as I said, looking through some of those data points and choosing what's relevant for your different users. Now, without getting too far into the strategy, but what you could do then is look at your audience, your pool of consumers, and segment them out into different needs and different wants. And you give each of them a different message. And that's how ultimately, hopefully, you would be able to keep your message relevant to the consumer without diluting your brand quality or brand perception. Is that fair?
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? Just here, lady to your right. Yeah.
I don't want to throw it at you.
Thanks. In the slide where you showed the supercharged brands, a fake brand versus the original brand, that 50%, say for smartphones, was that clicks or purchases? And if it was clicks, did you measure how many of them actually converted to purchases?
Good question, actually. I'll need to actually flick back through it, if I can, very quickly. I think it was... Share first. I'm actually not sure, so I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but I will double check it, and I'll come back to you afterwards. Actually, if you come down to me afterwards, I'll just get your details and I'll check with you. Okay. And I'll include that point of, no, it's actually an important point. I'll include that in the follow-up. So when you get the survey, if you want this material, I'll make sure to have a point of that clarification at the top of the presentation. So thank you for flagging that.
Thanks.
Just here in front of you.
This has been applied mainly to consumer. Is it the same for business to business as well?
Not as severe. So from chatting with AJ, so as I said, like I'm aligned with AJ in terms of how he approaches the UK and I approach the Irish business. It's not as severe for B2B because in practicality, a lot of this will be influenced. Like for B2B, it's going to be a bigger investment to move brands, if that makes sense. So if I am invested into supplier X, and I've got a contract with supplier X for whatever it is, let's just say, I don't know, car parts, I'm less flexible to a move because it's a bigger challenge for me to break away from a contract from an existing supplier. So yes, there is a level of flexibility, but it's not as severe as what we see for B2C, for sure. It's a different ballgame, essentially.
Okay, so where you had the same brand
Yeah.
and you're putting out different messaging for the same brand. I own Big Red Cloud, so should I put out Big Blue Cloud, Big Yellow Cloud?
No, so like
Same accounts, same company?
yeah. So like in your instance, so like it's not necessarily about. I mean, it's still relevant for you to display and share as much information and selling points about your business as you possibly can. And it's not necessarily for in the B2B instance. It's not necessarily around the flexibility point. As I said, it's much more difficult and it's a longer process, as I'm sure you well know, for someone to swap from a supplier to supplier in that example. But that doesn't mean that you putting out what's relevant for your business and giving as much information isn't still going to be profitable or productive for your business. So if you have unique selling points as a B2B advertiser, the message is still share that, and we'll see how we can then see and learn from that how that's going to be responded to by the marketplace. So I understand what you mean. Like, is it as severe as that, or should I be looking at different companies or fake brands out there as well? It's less about that. It's more about what are your unique selling points, and are you conveying that to the marketplace? If you're not, then I'd encourage you to try and layer that in.
Thanks.
Yeah. Just right down here.
Sorry.
In your in your slide on consumer bias, you are highlighting brand preference, scarcity, authority, etc. How powerful is advocacy and reviews on the purchasing of your products and the use of your products?
Yeah.
Did I mix it up? I didn't seem to see that in there, and I thought that was a big, powerful drive.
Yeah, so reviews are huge, and that would be part of the trusted piece where I mentioned the example, like with Gordon Ramsay and the wok. So Google is now an example of a trusted advisor. TripAdvisor is a Gordon Ramsay for travel. Do you know what I mean? That they're trusted, reputable brands that you can associate with quality. And to answer your question, they're massively important. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my hand, but the rise in Google reviews is through the roof. But also there was a study done last year, or at the start of this year, I beg your pardon, at how much that influences purchases. And Google, like if you look at any of the big major players out there now, even reviews on Amazon are critical to their business performance. People will look at that performance before they buy a product. Same Google Shopping. The reviews where you can see the product is here, what's the quality, people have bought it before, what's the star rating. I mentioned travel as well, so absolutely reviews are critical now, and I would say they're going to become more and more important because we live in a world where in the kind of internet ecosystem, the more quality assurance we can have, the more inclined we are to work with that customer, work with that consumer, buy from that person, whatever it might be.
And would you differentiate those from advocates? Or would you just call reviews our advocates?
They're kind of one and the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So like it's when I say advocacy, it's anything that gives a quality assurance to your brand, whether that's an individual person or if it is indeed a platform or a supplier of sorts.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Probably have time for one more. All good? Brilliant. Thank you very much, folks. Hi.